I've been looking into this issue for a number of months, actually. I've been aware of this issue for quite a while. The film Gasland was nominated for an Academy Award in 2010, and that first brought this issue of fracking to national attention. Near Middleville, we're looking at, here's Middleville. We're at the school right here, and these are the lands that are up for state leasing next week. Each of these blocks has land within it which will be leased. The hashing mark, the cross marks, that means it's non-development lease, which means they're not supposed to put any roads in or pipelines or drills or anything. That's what the leasing is for. Most of this is actually Irving Township. Some of it's Thornapple Township, right near the village. This is Yankee Springs Township, mostly. And you'll see that most of the state game area and the park, right up to the Gun Lake there, Barlow Lake, Payne Lake, are all up for lease by the state. My home is just right here, and so of course I have a particular concern about whether the water at my house will be polluted by a fracking activity that could take place, especially since the state game area is just across the street from us. Now I'm going to zoom in on this section here, which is the north end of Barlow Lake. So there's Barlow Lake, there's Briggs, and there's Bass, and my house is just up here a little bit. This side of Briggs is what's up for lease. But on the map, it actually shows both sides of the road up for lease. Well, that's not accurate. If you look really closely at the map that the state has, it shows that it's not 40 acres, it's only 21.7 acres. It's not the side of the lake, the side of the road that has houses on it. Okay? So if you're looking at this map, just make sure you zoom in really close, and I'll zoom in one more time. So there's Briggs Road, there's Barlow Lake. This is private land right here. That is not part of the lease that the state's doing. On this side of the road, that part of Berry State Game Area, we've got 40, 40, 20, and 15 acres that would be up for oil and gas lease. You'll notice it's an A, that's at auction, and it's hashed back and forth. That means non-development. There's not supposed to be any drilling there. Fracking has been taking place in Michigan for a number of years. What's new is the use of horizontal drilling, where the drill goes down and then it actually curves and then goes up to a mile underground, and then that underground horizontal section is fracked. Only 12 wells like that have been done in Michigan, where it's a horizontal well where that well's been fracked. That's a big difference from the vertical wells, the shallow wells going into the Antrim Shale, which there's something like 12,000 that have been fracked. These are from the state of Michigan, these are the various places where there's horizontal wells that have been fracked. Most of them are in the upper part of Lower Peninsula. Here's another map which shows basically the same thing. This map, there's a link. If you have internet, you're welcome to look at this slideshow from your home, click on the link, and you'll be able to zoom in and actually read details on these different wells. And this will be linked on the Local Future webpage. Near Kalkaska is a number of the wells that have been fracked horizontally in Michigan. After the oil and gas company builds the pad, which is maybe 4 acres, 3 or 4 acres, they'll drill down about a mile, and then they drill sideways about a mile. Then they put the fluid down. They try to crack the structures so that the gas comes up to the wellhead. Encana is one of the companies that is exploring Michigan right now. They have a well near Excelsior Township in Kalkaska County. And on one of the pads, they've already drilled one well, which is called 125 HD1. They're going from Section 1 of one township all the way over to Excelsior Township, Section 25, so it's about a mile. And HD for horizontal drilling 1. There's a number of the other names. They're drilling 3 wells on that so far they've been approved for. Each one's going in a slightly separate direction is my understanding. These 2 are 60 feet apart, that one's 50 feet apart. So on one pad, there might be multiple wells all going down and drilling. In Excelsior Township, it's been approved that they have a pipeline that's going to connect several of the wells. So the pipeline's going to go from that well that we just looked at. It's going to go across the street. It's going to go by this Camp Tapico, which I think is a Boy Scout camp, and then right up to a collection facility. You probably won't be able to read this. This is a detailed diagram of the site, again about 4 acres. This is 50 feet, and it shows how there's going to be various construction on the site, including the wells. There's the 2 wells there. There's going to be a freshwater pit here, and there's going to be a tank battery over here with frac fluid. The first well that Ancana put down, this is their diagram from their materials. They had to provide this to the state of Michigan. They went down about 9,000 feet. They turned the drill, and then they went across following the formation for about 8,000 feet. And then they went through and they fracked this entire section underneath. And then they have natural gas, which is coming up the pipe along with the water, the fracture fluid. What we learned last night was that Berry County does not have this formation at 9,000 feet. When we talked to the geologist, he said that the formation in this area was less than 2,000 feet, and that the water table goes down to 500 feet, or it varies depending on where you're at exactly in the county. There's a lot of detail in these state reports you're welcome to look at. This one simply shows how they turn the well, and it shows the degrees, and then it shows how deep they are, the vertical depth, and how far they went in each direction. This chart shows when they were fracking, which is injecting the liquid under high pressure using large trucks and large tanks. Mostly water, but also the chemicals and some sand-like materials. Once the cracks are made, the sand goes in and kind of holds the cracks open. You'll notice the fracking was done on multiple days. It was done on 2011, so this would have been October 25th, the 27th, the 28th, the 28th again, the 29th, the 29th again, Halloween. It shows exactly how much water went in, how much of each chemical went in. For example, the Supermax fracking fluid, it shows 150 gallons of that were applied on this first frac job, and this was all to the same well. Okay. So this process is new to Michigan, having multiple fractures along a horizontal well. It's not the same as having a vertical straight up and down well and just fracking at the one time. The industry has provided some information about some of the frac fluids. This is from a nearby well. It shows some of the ingredients in the frac fluid. There's alcohol, tar bases, 2,2-dibromo-3, nitropylamide, and various other things. Here's the production for this well. So this is down about 9,000 feet into the Utica-Collingwood structure, and it shows millions of cubic feet of gas produced. So somewhere around 2,000 million cubic feet. My understanding is that a cubic feet at the well head is selling for about $2. So this would be a $4,000 sale there for this day. Yeah, this On the 19th of, I believe it was November, yeah, 19th of November, this well released about 2,000 million cubic feet of natural gas. And if that's $2 per million cubic feet, then that's about $4,000 of saleable product from that well. I'm sorry? This one? That would be a good question for that geologist presentation. I'm not sure the answer on that. The question was about the hydrochloric acid, what that's used for. Okay, Mary Ann said she'll touch on that in her presentation. Yeah. Another thing that the Excelsior well up there, 113 HD1, they did a test to see what kind of natural gas was coming out. It was mostly methane, some ethane, some propane, butane, pentane, heptane, and some hydrocarbons that are even longer string than those. Most of it is methane. Now, as far as concerns, there are a whole bunch of different concerns that people have about hydraulic fracturing, and I'm just going to quickly list them. And maybe you have some of these concerns. As far as water, whether it'll impact the drinking water, streams or lakes, if it'll impact the water table. As far as air, people have been concerned about odors, toxins, production of carbon dioxide. People near the wells concerned about noise during the drilling and also the compression that's necessary to put those natural gases into the pipeline. People are also concerned about the view out their window, how it looks, and at nighttime if lights are on the rig. It could keep them up at night. Land issues. There is acreage taken up by these pads. The pipeline does take up space. The processing takes up space if there's a processing facility. And of course the roads in and out take up some space. On the county roads and the township roads, of course there's wear and tear from a lot of truck traffic. I've heard that over 100 semis could come in and out of that site, so that's a lot of truck traffic, wear and tear on the road, plus just traffic to deal with for those of us that live in the area, for those of you that might live in the area. There have been reports of earthquakes where the waste material is injected into an injection well that builds up pressure underneath the earth and that causes an earthquake. And of course, some people are concerned that there are climate impacts because anytime you burn oil or coal or natural gas, that changes into carbon dioxide. The economic concerns we've heard of, a lot of the labor is not from within the community, so a lot of that money people might be expecting doesn't actually come to the community. Even for the people that earn some money, in a globalized economy like we have right now, we buy a lot of products and only a small fraction of that money goes to the local business owners. So there is an increase of money within a community, but that increase is typically short-term, a few years. Other concerns with the leases, of course, the leases are always worded to the advantage of the companies, so anybody who's considering signing a lease should consult a lawyer that's familiar with oil and gas leases. Natural gas wells are typically in operation for a short period of time, a few years at most, not as long as an oil well. And at the moment, of course, natural gas prices are at all-time low. So for people that are signing leases, and then if they did actually have some hydraulic fracking and a natural gas production, they'd only be paid $2 per million cubic feet as compared to $16 per million cubic feet. Of course, the leaseor only gets a sixth of that or a fifth of that depending on their lease quantity. So this would be a consideration for, yes, this would be a consideration for people who are considering signing a lease. Is it better to sign a lease now and have that natural gas potentially taken out now, or would it be better to sign that lease in 5 years or 10 years when the natural gas price might be quite a bit higher than a record low that it's at right now. And we've already talked about how the leases, you really do need to have an oil and gas lawyer look at it before those leases are signed. Now, one of my questions for Michigan was, has there actually been contamination in Michigan? And has there been contamination in other places? Well, this is one study. This is published in the National Institutes for Health. It's called Methane Contamination of Drinking Water, Accompanying Gas Well Drilling and Hydraulic Fracturing. This study was done in Pennsylvania, near Dimmock. Here's a picture of one of the oil and gas, one of the fracking sites in Dimmock, right next to a house, a couple houses. This is 50 feet, so this is about 300 feet by 300 feet. There's some wells and some tanks there. There's another site. This site has various trucks on, perhaps the pump trucks or the trucks that hold the fracking fluid after it's come out of the earth. Dimmock had a number of wells, and there were many places where the water samples were taken by this study. What the study found was that the closer people were to the well, the more likely that the methane level in their well water would be high. For those well waters tested, which were far away from the nearest gas well, the methane level was very low. But for a number, not all, but for a number of the ones that were close to the gas well, the methane level was very high. One of the things we learned last night, the standards in Pennsylvania for drilling and putting down casing is different from the standards in Michigan. So the geologist last night suggested that this would be less likely or too impossible in Michigan. The EPA has done a study in Wyoming in the town of Pavillion. This study is not complete. It's been published for scientists to read over, to review, and to note on. This was an investigation of groundwater contamination near Pavillion, Wyoming. And I'll just read two quotes out of this study. It's a 115-page study. It's long to read. Detection of high concentration of benzene, xylenes, gasoline, range organics, diesel range organics, and total purgeable hydrocarbons in groundwater samples from shallow monitoring wells near pits indicates that pits are a source of shallow groundwater contamination in the area of investigation. So if there's a pit that's full of fracking fluid, then this is what this is saying, that there could be contamination out of that pit. In Michigan, what our geologist said yesterday is once the frack fluid comes out of the earth, it doesn't go into a pit, it goes into tanks, and then once there's nothing left to do with it, those tanks are moved to a different site, and that frack fluid is pumped into an injection well. So it's never exposed to the air. That doesn't make it impossible for there to be a leak, but it certainly would seem to make it less likely. This report goes on to say that the data indicates a likely impact to groundwater that can be explained by hydraulic fracturing in Wyoming with Wyoming's regulations. Now in Michigan, there are two cases that have been mentioned often in the last few months that I've been looking into it. The first is a Christmas Eve gas leak identified as toxic hydrogen sulfide. This was a leak that was near Beaver Creek Township in Crawford County. And this leak went on for, I think, several hours it was. This was an injection well. So there's a producing well bringing up natural gas, but it's also bringing up hydrogen sulfide. The hydrogen sulfide, which is a poison, is separated from the natural gas, and then the hydrogen sulfide is supposed to be pumped down into a different well called an injection well. And what happened in this case was there's a leak from that injection well. Another case is in Benzie County. Joyfield Township. And it says, this was February of last year, operations at a more than 1,000 feet deep natural well being drilled in Michigan's northwestern Lower Peninsula with a technique called hydraulic fracturing were shut down after a leak was detected earlier this week, the state reported Thursday. And here's the quote out of that Record Eagle Traverse City paper. It says, the company had just installed a new well, said the Department of Natural Resources and Environment spokesman Brad Werfel. They turned it on and found liquid bubbling. The department said it was the first time such a hydraulic fracturing or fracking operation has experienced a leak in Michigan. About 12,000 wells in Michigan have been drilled, those are the vertical wells, straight up and down, using the technique since the 1960s, the state said. The state said cement used to contain a steel sleeve in the well where the liquid is pumped apparently failed, causing the leak in the well being drilled through a rock bed called Antrim Shale. I wanted to confirm this, so I emailed Brad Werfel a couple days ago, and this was his response. He said that the incident involved a leak of nitrogen gas between the casing and the cement sheath. The nitrogen came up between two strings of casing and escaped to the atmosphere. He goes on to say later in the email that nitrogen is 70% of our air, 8% of our air, so he doesn't consider that to be a pollutant. Nonetheless, we required Presidium to drill a monitoring well near the gas well to test the aquifer and the water. The monitor well confirmed that there was no contamination of the fresh water. So it's useful to look into these articles sometimes. Sometimes the newspaper doesn't get it exactly right, and it's good to look into those things. On noise, last week, Mike Miller, a driller, from Kalamazoo came to Circle Pine Center, and he was talking about the noise. And as the owner of a drilling company, he would know. He said, if you're drilling, it could be 3 weeks, 24 hours, 7. It's noisy, it's disturbing, it's going to make some noise. That would be for one well. Yeah. So some considerations when we're talking about hydraulic fracturing on horizontal wells. Number one, there's been no long-term testing on this sort of well in Michigan. They're very new to Michigan. Within the last 5 years, the Excelsior well, which I put up earlier, was only just tested a few months ago. Accidents, of course, do happen. We've seen that around the country with various fracking wells. There are concerns regarding how close these are to homes, schools, and businesses. When there is damage to the water, the federal government has said there's really no way to repair that damage. If the water becomes contaminated, there's no way to repair it. So if there is damage, it's irreparable, and the burden typically falls on the public, the government, the township, or the state to do what they can to fix it. Another consideration is there's no rush. If there's natural gas underneath us right here at the school, there's no rush to get that out right now with natural gas at the lowest prices in history. So if the school were considering leasing, my recommendation would be wait. And of course, the precaution principle is if you're not completely satisfied that it's a safe thing, it's better to be cautious and wait until you either learn more or more facts become available. Now, a quick vision of local future. Local future encourages energy through Michigan production of solar and wind. This would be a solar hot water system to provide hot water in a house. This is a solar air system to provide hot air in a house. And if anybody goes down Cherry Valley Road, you'll notice there's a house that uses this hot air technology to lower their energy costs. New homes can be built using solar technology where the sun comes in and it warms the inside of the house, the floor surfaces, and it keeps the house warm, lowering bills. For new homes, there's a standard called the passive house standard, with homes that are so well insulated they don't even require a furnace, just a small electric heater. Heat pumps can take heat right out of the ground, pump them into the earth for much less energy. There are stoves, masonry stoves, which burn for a couple hours, heat up the masonry, and then heat the house all day long. And there's a home like this in southern Berry County. For electricity, photovoltaic panels on roofs are very effective. I have photovoltaic panels on my roof, and my roof generates more electricity, it did last year, than my house actually used, more than I used. Consumers Energy actually has a program where if you are accepted to the program, they will pay you more money than you are charged for the electricity. So they'll pay you 22 cents per kilowatt hour, and then they only charge you 12 cents. So you can actually get a check each month. And that's the program I'm in at the moment. Solar electric panels, the price of those has lowered dramatically over the last 2 years. It used to be $5 per kilowatt, and now it's down to about $1 or $1.50 per kilowatt. In Michigan, up in Manistee, wind turbines for electricity are built. This is one built by a Michigan company called Mariah Power. It's a personal wind turbine that one could use at their house. And in Michigan, we're also having large-scale wind operations. One of these operations is already up near Cadillac, if you're on 115 south of Cadillac, and another one is being built near the pump storage near Ludington. Local Future would advocate that communities generate their own energy by putting up electrical renewable energy generation. And another thing Michigan has going for it, even though wind happens, sometimes it's not windy, and sun, at night it's not sunny, but we do have a huge battery in Michigan called the Ludington Pump Storage. This is a pond that was built right on Lake Michigan just south of Ludington, and during the day, or during the night, this thing is pumped up. The water is pumped out of Lake Michigan up into this pond, and then in the afternoon, like right now, when there's a lot of energy demand, the water comes down just like a hydroelectric dam. Okay? So there is ways to store energy even from wind and solar. If you would like to learn more about fracking, one of the first things I would recommend is go to the Local Future website. We'll have those 3 presentations from Pierce Cedar Creek on the internet within a week from now. There will be a link somewhere on this page, on this first page. You can click on it, watch any of those presentations. You'll be able to watch this presentation or show this to your friends. The website is localfuture.org.